The Berlin Wall, a symbol of division, a concrete curtain separating East and West. Then, in 1989, something incredible happened. Hammers rang out, chisels chipped away. The wall, once impenetrable, began to crumble. People poured through the gaps, tears in their eyes, cheers on their lips. This was more than just a wall falling. It was the beginning of the end for a superpower, the Soviet Union. For decades, the USSR stood as a giant, a communist titan, stretching from the Baltic Sea to the Pacific Ocean. But beneath the surface, cracks were appearing. Economic stagnation, political oppression, and a growing desire for freedom were eating away at the foundations of this mighty empire. The fall of the Berlin Wall wasn't just a symbolic victory for the West. It was a tremor that shook the Soviet Union to its core. The images of that night, beamed around the world, were electrifying. East and West Germans, once separated by concrete and ideology, embraced in celebration. This moment sent shockwaves through the Soviet bloc. It emboldened those yearning for change and sent a clear message. The iron grip of Soviet control was weakening. The world watched with bated breath. What would happen next? The fall of the Berlin Wall was a pivotal moment in history. It marked a turning point, not just for Germany, but for the entire world. The Soviet Union, once thought invincible, was now facing its own mortality. The question was no longer if the Soviet Union would fall, but when. At the heart of this dramatic story stands Mikhail Gorbachev, the last leader of the Soviet Union. A man who ascended to power promising reform, Gorbachev would become a pivotal figure in the empire's demise. He inherited a nation struggling with economic stagnation and political ossification. His answer, perestroika and glasnost. Perestroika, meaning restructuring, aimed to revitalize the stagnant Soviet economy. Glasnost, meaning openness, promised greater transparency and freedom of expression. These reforms, while well-intentioned, unleashed forces Gorbachev couldn't control. Gorbachev's reforms were a double-edged sword. While they aimed to revitalize the Soviet system, they also exposed its weaknesses. The new freedoms, though limited, emboldened people to voice long-suppressed grievances. Nationalist sentiments, long simmering beneath the surface, erupted in places like the Baltics and Ukraine. The Soviet Union, once held together by an iron fist, was now grappling with the unintended consequences of reform. Gorbachev's attempts to save the system only hastened its demise. He had unwittingly opened Pandora's box. To truly understand the fall of the Soviet Union, we need to look beyond the halls of power and into the everyday lives of its citizens. Life in the late Soviet Union was a study in contrasts. On the surface, there was an appearance of order and stability. But beneath the surface, a different reality was playing out. People stood in endless lines for basic necessities. Shelves were bare. The quality of life, once a source of pride, was deteriorating. Whispers of discontent, once hushed, grew louder. People were tired of shortages, tired of empty promises, and tired of living in a system that seemed to stifle their dreams. For many, life in the Soviet Union was one of constant struggle. The black market thrived as people sought to acquire goods that were scarce or unavailable through official channels. There was a sense of disillusionment, a growing feeling that the system was broken. These hardships fueled the desire for change. People yearned for a better life, one with greater freedom and opportunity. The seeds of discontent, sown in the long lines and empty shops, were beginning to sprout. Section 4. Empty Shelves and Shifting Sands. The economy unravels. The Soviet economy, once a model of centrally planned might, was crumbling. Decades of inefficiency, a focus on heavy industry at the expense of consumer goods, and a costly arms race with the West had taken their toll. Empty shelves became a potent symbol of the system's failures. Gorbachev's perestroika, meant to revitalize the economy, instead exposed its deep-seated problems. Attempts to introduce market mechanisms into the centrally planned system created chaos. Shortages worsened. Inflation soared. The once mighty Soviet economy was teetering on the brink. The Chernobyl disaster of 1986 further exposed the shortcomings of the Soviet system. The government's initial attempts to cover up the disaster eroded public trust. The economic cost of the cleanup added further strain to an already struggling system. The economic woes of the Soviet Union played a crucial role in its downfall. People were losing faith in the system's ability to provide even the basic necessities. The dream of a worker's paradise was fading, replaced by the harsh realities of economic hardship. Section 5. A World Divided, the Cold War, and International Pressure. The Soviet Union's demise unfolded against the backdrop of the Cold War, a decades-long geopolitical struggle with the United States. This rivalry, fueled by ideological differences and military buildups, played a significant role in the Soviet collapse. The U.S., under President Ronald Reagan, took a hard line against the Soviet Union, labeling it an evil empire and increasing military spending. This pressure, coupled with the economic burden of propping up communist regimes in Eastern Europe, placed immense strain on the Soviet system. The Soviet-Afghan War, a costly and ultimately futile conflict, further drained the Soviet Union's resources and morale. The war, dubbed the Soviet Union's Vietnam, highlighted the limits of Soviet power and fueled public discontent back home. The Cold War, once a seemingly intractable standoff, was reaching a turning point. The Soviet Union, weakened from within and facing relentless pressure from the outside, was struggling to maintain its grip on power. Section 6. December 26, 1991. The Fall. The year 1991 witnessed a cascade of events that culminated in the Soviet Union's demise. Emboldened by the weakening grip of Moscow, republics within the Soviet Union began to assert their independence. Lithuania led the way, declaring its independence in 1990. In August 1991, a group of hardline communists, fearing the disintegration of the Soviet Union, staged a coup against Gorbachev. The coup, however, backfired. It was met with widespread opposition, with Boris Yeltsin, then president of the Russian Republic, emerging as a key figure in resisting the coup. The failed coup proved to be the death knell of the Soviet Union. With Gorbachev politically weakened, the republics moved swiftly to solidify their independence. On December 26, 1991, the Soviet Union formally ceased to exist. The once mighty superpower, a nation that had spanned 11 time zones and played a dominant role on the world stage for most of the 20th century, was no more. Section 7. A World Transformed, Echoes of an Empire. The collapse of the Soviet Union had profound implications for the world. It marked the end of the Cold War, reshaped the geopolitical landscape, and ushered in an era of uncertainty and change. New nations emerged from the ashes of the empire, each grappling with the legacy of Soviet rule. The fall of the Soviet Union also had a profound impact on the balance of power in the world. The United States emerged as the sole superpower, but the world was no longer divided into two rigid ideological camps. The collapse also led to a reassessment of global security arrangements, with NATO and other institutions adapting to a post-Cold War world. The legacy of the Soviet Union remains a subject of debate and discussion. For some, it is a cautionary tale of the dangers of totalitarianism and the unsustainable nature of centrally planned economies. For others, it is a reminder of a time when a different world order seemed possible. The story of the Soviet Union's collapse is a complex and multifaceted one. It is a story of hubris and overreach, of reform and unintended consequences, and of the enduring human desire for freedom and self-determination. It is a story that continues to shape the world we live in today.